Exposed. The incredible truth that silenced everyone after my son banned me from his own wedding. Sarah's heart raced as she replayed the words Jake had spoken, the crisp finality of them echoing in her ears. Banned. From his wedding. How had it come to this? With each painful syllable, a wedge was driven deeper into the fabric of their relationship, leaving her feeling unmoored in the very life she had built. Memories flashed through her mind, Jake as a boy, always needing her, trusting her. Now he stood before her, a man ready to distance himself, all because of his fiancée's snide remarks masked as concern. Their humble beginnings deemed unworthy. Her mind spun, how could they not see the strength, resilience, and love woven into their lives like a patchwork quilt? The mornings had started to feel heavier as she tried to avoid that resignation lurking behind every shadow. There was the distinct fragrance of blooming magnolias outside, but they only reminded her of her childhood, the vivid struggles and hard work cementing her history in this suburban landscape. She had given everything for Jake, sacrificing her own dreams to cultivate his. And yet, it seemed all that was dismissed despite her decades of dedication in the community as a nurse. But now, a storm brewed inside her, a mix of disbelief and determination. I won't let their narrow perspectives define me, she muttered to herself, though the tremor in her voice betrayed her confidence. There was a deep sense of injustice festering, an insidious doubt nudging at her core. What if she really was a failure in her son's eyes? Two fragments of her identity clashed, one, the proud mother who had built her life around Jake, and the other, the wounded individual confronting harsh truths about her own worth. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Days dragged on. Each time the doorbell rang, a reminder of the finality of the upcoming wedding. The walls of her home, the sanctuary she decreated for both of them, now felt like boundaries, closing in. How had it all changed so quickly? A few conversations with Jake's fiancée, filled with disdain cloaked as concern, revealed layers of complexity she never anticipated. It wasn't merely about his wedding. It was about redefining their entire family narrative. She wrestled with wanting to expose the truth, the unpolished stories about her father battling financial hardship that he had never let define him. That legacy should have made Jake proud, not an anchor dragging him down. As the date crept nearer, the tension in the air felt electric, urging her to confront Jake once more. The simmering emotions burst forth in their kitchen, a space once filled with joy, now caught in unsettling silence. Jake, she began, stifling the lump in her throat. And just as she gathered her courage, ready to lay bare the emotions he needed to hear, his resolve broke through. I can't go through with this wedding if it means I'm turning my back on you. Time stood still, and Sarah's heart constricted in her chest. Was this the moment to reveal everything, to fight for their family? She felt the flood of emotions crashing against her, teetering on the edge of hope and despair. The storm of their past loomed between them, but would he understand? Would forgiveness be enough? As the dangerous possibility of lost love swirled around her, she clung to the fragile thread of anticipation, uncertain of what would come next. Silence enveloped the kitchen, thick and palpable, twisted with tension and unspoken words. Sarah searched Jake's eyes, desperate for a glimmer of light, a hint that he understood her struggle. Did he see the depths of her sacrifice, the battles she fought just to support him? Or was he blinded by the sparkling facade of his fiancée's life, a veneer that masked a toxic undercurrent of judgment? She turned inward, analyzing the relationship through the painful lens of their current standoff. Beneath the surface, conflicting emotions churned: love, fear, resentment, all weaving into a chaotic tapestry. Could they really navigate this labyrinth of emotions and trust? The clock seemed to tick louder, as if mocking her hesitation. Jake, she started, her voice trembling but edged with a newfound steadiness. Something had shifted within her since the confrontation. With every ounce of courage she could muster, she began to push against the walls of separation that had formed. I've always been here for you. You know that, right? He nodded slowly, but his gaze fell, burdened with indecision. In that moment, Sarah grasped the truth. This was not merely about his wedding. It was a reckoning of their values and identities. If she was to reclaim her place in his life, she needed to rediscover who she was beyond being his mother, the nurturer who sacrificed her aspirations. A sudden realization struck her. Her nursing career had been one filled with personal accomplishment, a domain where she flourished. In a hospital bustling with life and urgency, she thrived on the adrenaline of saving lives, the joy in witnessing recoveries. Maybe it was time to channel that passion for self-advocacy into her family dynamics. I'm proud of our past, Jake. Yes, things were hard, but they shaped who I am today, she said firmly, breathing more life into her voice with each word. The intensity of her gaze anchored her resolve. And I hope you can see the beauty in our history instead of seeing it as a burden. Jake's brow furrowed as he processed her words. His mouth opened, then closed, uncertainty swirling within him. Mom, I never wanted to hurt you. I'm trying to do right by Sarah. The mention of his fiancée sparked a flare of turmoil in her chest. A painful reminder of the need for boundaries, not just with those outside but within too. Yet deep down Sarah understood. She needed boundaries to preserve their relationship. She had spent years absorbing the weight of expectations. And now it was time to dismantle the narrative that had replaced their bond with doubt. Then we can't allow anyone to dictate our family story, she replied, her heart racing with a surge of hope. Our bond is too strong for that. I may not be perfect, but I've never turned my back on you. The kitchen remained thick with unspoken thoughts, an uncertain truce forming as Sarah felt a small flicker of hope. They were both standing at a crossroads, not just for Jake's wedding, but for the integrity of their relationship. Let us find a way, Jake, she added, a plea that melded with determination. We deserve a chance to figure this out together. I will not be silenced. As her words hung in the air, Jake met her gaze with a newfound intensity. In this fraught moment, it became painfully evident. The path forward was laden with challenges but also the possibility of a renewed bond. Sarah took a deep breath, preparing for the next wave of dialogue. Change had begun to stir, but would they both lean into the discomfort ahead? Unraveling their identities might unearth hidden wounds, but it also held the promise of fresh beginnings. Jake shifted, his expression now a mixture of contemplation and concern. What do you think we can really say to each other that will change anything? And with that question, Sarah sensed the pivotal moment had arrived. Could vulnerable, open communication reshape their narrative? She was about to step into an emotional minefield, and for the first time, the stakes were no longer just confined to the wedding. It was about crafting a future together. Despite the ghosts of their pasts, standing on the precipice of a deeper truth, how would she choose to frame their evolving story? As Sarah took in Jake's question, the flicker of resolution burned brighter within her. She exhaled slowly, weighing her response with care. The delicate dance of vulnerability loomed before them, and the trajectory of their conversation hinged on her next words. Jake, what I believe we need to say is not just about regrets or past mistakes, she began, anchoring her stance with sincerity. It's about truly hearing each other, every fear, every longing. Her voice steadied as she continued. I want to understand your choices, but I need you to know mine too. We've danced around the truth for too long. Jake shifted uneasily, his shoulders tense. The weight of their unspoken history pressed down upon them. She could almost hear the echoes of everything that had been left unsaid. Mom, I get that. It's just with Sarah, it feels like I'm forging a new path, and I don't want to lose what we've built. His brow knitted with urgency. A boy caught between a childhood he didn't want to abandon and a future that felt uncertain. That statement knotted Sarah's stomach. What had her years of nurturing amounted to if they were so fragile in light of an impending marriage? But at what cost, Jake? Your new life shouldn't mean dismantling everything we've shared. I'm still your mother. Her voice rose slightly, betraying her frustration before she caught herself. Inhaling deeply to recenter her emotions. A silence fell between them, heavy with the implications of their dialogue. In that moment of stillness, Sarah revisited the emotions she had tucked away for too long. Insecurities, disappointed dreams, the echoes of a career that had faded behind the responsibilities of motherhood. It stung, realizing that had her life been different, perhaps they wouldn't be facing this rift now. Let me be part of this, Jake. Including your future with Sarah. You don't have to push me away to build something new. You can let me help shape it. The raw honesty of her plea surprised even her, revealing the fierce determination she hadn't approached family matters with before. She was not only his mother, she was an individual with valuable experiences worthy of being acknowledged. His hesitation was palpable, and Sarah could see his inner conflict reflected in his eyes. It dawned on her that this was about building bridges, not tearing down the past. But could she really convey that they were due for a renaissance in their relationship? Mom, I just don't want to compromise what I have with her. I fear you'll think I'm disloyal. Jake's confession hung heavily, the unfiltered truth sparking a new set of emotions within her. Fear of inadequacy, fear of loss. There's room enough for all facets of our lives, Jake. Love doesn't have to be an either-or situation. Imagine integrating our worlds instead of keeping them apart. The idea flowed with a newfound vitality, illuminating her internal landscape. Jake's face shifted, a cocktail of realization and desire flickering across his features. Could we really do that? The question manifested not as doubt, but an inkling of hope flickering faintly. What if we met with Sarah together, just to talk? To show her that I'm here, not to overshadow her, but to be part of this family as you build it, Sarah proposed, threading her own ambitions into the conversation. It was a chance to reclaim her narrative, to assert that her past did not dictate her, nor did it deter them from growth. The corners of Jake's mouth quirked, a faint smile breaking through his defenses. I just hope she's willing to see it that way. We can only try, Sarah asserted, clutching his hands as a sign of unity. Determination sparked in her chest. It was time to confront the big unknown. Sarah, Jake's fiancée, might challenge Sarah's place in their family. But perhaps what lay ahead wasn't solely a confrontation, but a blend of diverse experiences creating a more colorful family tapestry than she could envision alone. As they stood there, hands intertwined, ready to challenge the existing narrative, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that the hardest conversation waited just around the corner, the moment when they would reveal their intentions to Sarah. Would brave honesty build alliances or simply ignite new tensions? The stakes had never been higher, and the air crackled with uncharted possibilities. As the evening drew near, Sarah's heart pounded in her chest. Their discussion had only been the tip of the iceberg. The prospect of meeting Sarah, Jake's fiancée, filled her with an inexplicable mixture of excitement and dread. This encounter could very well redefine her role in their lives. Gone were the days when she felt comfortably invisible, cocooned in motherhood. Now the stakes felt monumental. She paced a small area in her kitchen, the aroma of simmering vegetables and garlic filling the air, yet she barely registered the comforting scents. Shopping for ingredients had been a distraction, a means to channel her frayed nerves into something tangible. As she sliced through the vegetables, she thought about how she had let herself drift in the background for too long. She had argued for a connection with Jake, yet she realized she had also withdrawn from her own path of growth. Her reflections steered her toward a deeper understanding. Was she projecting an old version of herself onto Jake, expecting him to hold her hand while she grappled with her own insecurities? Her fingers paused mid-slice as the realization washed over her. This wasn't merely about Jake or Sarah. This was about asserting her own identity, redefining her role, and seeking fulfillment beyond being just a mother. With renewed focus, Sarah allowed her mind to conjure images of the woman she had once aspired to be: confident, assertive, and unapologetically ambitious. She had shelved those aspirations, but this moment called for resurgence. She needed to reclaim her voice, not just for herself but for Jake too. If she could face Sarah with authenticity, perhaps she could inspire Jake to embrace an honest dialogue that would preserve their family unit. You can do this, she murmured to herself, gripping the kitchen counter. You are more than just a mother. You are a force. The sound of the door opening knocked her from her reverie. Jake's arrival pulled her from the depths of introspection back into reality. His face bore the familiar mix of youthful exuberance and worry. Before she could ask how he felt about their impending meeting, he spoke. Hey Mom, I was thinking we should really know what Sarah wants before we go ahead with this. I mean, it might be too overwhelming for her. His concern punctured her resolve momentarily. What if we approach it as a collaboration? A way to merge our worlds? She proposed, catching sight of his hesitation. I want her to understand how important you are to me and how our family can expand, without losing what we have. Jake's brow furrowed. An almost physical manifestation of his internal wrestling match. You're right, but? Sarah pressed gently, sensing the boundaries of his comfort zone. I just don't want any friction. I care for you both, he admitted, his voice a whisper of vulnerability. His conflict mirrored her own, entwining their fates in this pivotal moment. The beauty of family was fluidity. Nothing had to be static. She needed to remind him that connection comes from deep conversations, even ones that feel risky. She softened her tone. Sometimes friction brings transformation, Jake. Let us be courageous together. As the clock ticked steadily forward, the hour of their meeting loomed closer. Jake exhaled and nodded, the shadows of doubt still lingering but slowly dissipating. Okay, let us do this. Sarah's pulse quickened with the weight of resolution, but she was ready. What choice remained but to embrace the unknown? They exchanged a knowing glance, an unspoken pact between them. Together they were moving into uncharted territory with a common goal. But as they stepped outside into the evening air, questions hung heavily in the atmosphere. Would Sarah respond with openness? Would this dialogue unveil the motherly bond or evoke defensiveness? Moments away from introducing herself to the woman set to marry her son, Sarah sensed the horizon of possibilities stretching infinitely before her. But one thought persisted naggingly. Would this encounter break their family apart or build something stronger? The darkness whispered promises, bold and uncertain. With every step, the weight of anticipation pressed down on her, each heartbeat counting down to the revelation that awaited them on the other side of this door. As they approached the quaint house that Jake and Sarah had picked for their meeting, Sarah's nerves surged anew. Each step felt like an effort, pulling her between excitement and anxiety. She took a deep breath, inhaling the salty breeze that hinted at the nearby ocean, trying to ground herself in the moment instead of spiraling into what-ifs. Remember, Jake said, his voice firm yet gentle. This is our chance to show her who we are as a family. Sarah nodded, feeling the weight of his encouragement settle over her. It wasn't merely a directive. It was a lifeline, a reminder that she wasn't alone in this journey. As they reached the front porch, she paused for a heartbeat. Wasn't this a pivotal moment for her too? This was not only about his relationship with Sarah. It was a testament to her own courage, her return to agency. With a determined smile, she stepped forward and knocked on the door. The sound echoed, and the quiet of their moment was a stark contrast to the whirlwind in her mind. Every second stretched, emphasizing her vulnerability and the stakes involved. Finally, the door creaked open, and there stood Sarah, radiant and poised, an embodiment of the charm that had drawn Jake in. "Ha! You must be Sarah," Jake's fiancée greeted, her voice bright as morning sunshine. The warmth in her smile ignited a spark of hope within Sarah. Perhaps, just perhaps, this meeting could be the bridge she had envisioned. "Hello. Yes, I'm Sarah," she replied, channeling the confidence she had summoned only moments ago. "Thank you for inviting us." Jake and Sarah entered, a beautiful living room adorned in soft pastels coming to life around them. As they settled into their seats, Sarah couldn't help but observe the dynamic in the room. She had always thought of her role as a passive observer, but now she realized she had the power to create a presence that affirmed her worth and Jake's. Small talk flowed initially, yet beneath surface pleasantries, a palpable tension danced in the air. Sarah's thoughts spun. Would Jake's Sarah feel like a threat? Would she perceive the deep bond connecting mother and son as a complication rather than a strength? "Jake mentioned you have a passion for cooking," the younger Sarah said, having picked up on the aromatic promise that still clung to Sarah's clothes. "I do, actually," she replied, embracing the topic. "Cooking has been my way of sharing love with my family. It's an expression of care." That simple statement felt like a bridge, a moment of connection away from the anxiety swirling in her chest. Jake's Sarah seemed to nod in understanding, her eyes lighting up with curiosity. Unknowingly, Sarah found herself opening up more. "I believe in the beauty of nurturing relationships," Sarah continued, searching for common ground. Much like my cooking, my goal has always been to create an environment where everyone feels welcomed and loved. I'm invested in Jake's happiness, in every sense of the word. The reply was instant. I really appreciate that, Jake. Sarah responded softly, an earnestness shining through. It means a lot to me that you're embracing this partnership. Just as a potential alliance began to take shape, a tug from her own truth seeped into the atmosphere, a realization that Sarah had not anticipated. The warmth she felt quickly shifted as a flash of self-doubt punctured her growing confidence. Despite all her affirmations, the fear of losing Jake, or being deemed inadequate, loomed large. Would her authenticity, her desire to connect, be enough to welcome Sarah into their family? As their discussions deepened, Sarah battled through moments of fragility. Each time she felt vulnerability rise, she returned to the notion of reclaiming her true self. How simple it was to slip into old patterns of self-doubt. She had to actively combat that instinct. Reframe it as a chance to express who she truly was. Glancing at Jake, his attentive expression bolstered her resolve. In that moment, she recognized the duality of the situation. While she must forge a bond with Jake's fiancé, she also had to solidify her own identity within this shifting family landscape. Yet as thoughts morphed into words, something hung in the air, unspoken and undeniable. The stakes were rising, and beneath the camaraderie lay an undercurrent of complexity. How would they navigate their intertwined futures? With every heartbeat, Sarah sensed something igniting beneath the surface, an uncharted territory calling out for exploration. What revelations awaited as the evening unfolded? Would her truth mingle harmoniously with Jake's new love? Or would it unravel the delicate web they were weaving? The thread of anticipation tightened as they delved deeper, enveloping Sarah within its grasp, urging her to confront what lay ahead. The beginning of the conversation with Jake's fiancé hung heavily in the air, tinged with unease and expectation. Sarah felt the weight of unexpressed emotions around them, simmering just below the surface. The more they talked about cooking, family traditions, and their shared love for Jake, the more Sarah's internal struggle intensified. Even as she projected confidence, an involuntary chill danced along her spine, that persistent whisper of fear reminding her of uncertainty. How about we share recipes sometime? The younger Sarah suggested, her enthusiasm brightening the ambience. It was spontaneous, yet Sarah's heart raced at the prospect. Could a shared interest evolve into a bond? Absolutely. I'd love that. Sarah felt the reply escape her lips, the words surprising even herself. She should have stayed cautious, discerning. But in that fleeting moment, hope glimmered like the morning sun filtering through the living room window. Jake's approving nod spurred her own resolve. Perhaps this was part of the reclaiming she had set out to achieve, to not only claim her role as a supportive mother, but as a culinary artist capable of bridging gaps and fostering closeness. Yet, she couldn't shake the pervasive doubt as she watched Jake interacting with his fiancée. They shared knowing glances and inside jokes, moments woven together with admiration and playful affection. Their connection felt tangible, a whirlwind of youthful love that made Sarah question her role in this new reality. Was she merely an afterthought in the narrative they were weaving? As the discussions continued, something deep within Sarah grappled with the notion of acceptance. She realized she was being extended a lifeline, an invitation to redefine her identity, yet the fear of inadequacy clawed at her. Could she venture forth, forging a relationship with Jake's fiancé, while also protecting their existing bond? Focusing back on the conversation, Sarah found herself drawn to a candid approach. As a mother, I've learned that love often means letting go, allowing our children to grow alongside new relationships, she observed carefully, gauging the room's energy. Vulnerability seeped into her tone as she continued, but it's also about ensuring that I'm still part of their lives, which I hope to be with you both. Jake's gaze met hers, a grounding force that momentarily quieted the storm inside. The younger Sarah's eyes widened, clearly taken aback by the honesty. Yet there was an understanding reflected back. That is so important, she replied, sincerity lacing her words. It's really kind of you to express that. I want you to feel included. Underneath the surface-level pleasantries, they were sketching the outline of a potential friendship, a family blend that could enrich all their lives. Yet doubts swirled furiously. Could the bond she was attempting to build hold when the looming specter of change cast its long shadow? As the evening progressed, Sarah found herself oscillating between confidence and an insistent inner voice that questioned her worth. Reminded of past experiences when she felt sidelined or diminished, she held on to the hope of crafting something meaningful. Could she anchor herself in a role that was no longer solely maternal, but also collaborative? However, the thought of navigating through the uncharted waters of familial bonds with someone new was daunting. Even as she spoke and engaged, a voice in her head insisted, "But what if your love for Jake complicates things? What if you're not enough?" In that moment, clarity hit. This gathering would not only solidify their future as a family, it was also a critical point for her own growth. She could redefine her role, while simultaneously embracing the changes surrounding her. It was about standing firm in her identity, blending her legacy with the new. With renewed determination, she leaned into her truth. "I want us all to come together, to build a family that thrives," she affirmed, feeling a rush of strength. "I'm willing to meet you where you are, and I hope we can create something beautiful." But as the conversation turned to practicalities and planning, Sarah's heart raced again. There was an underlying current she couldn't ignore. What hidden complexities lay beneath these friendly exchanges? The evening drew to a close, and as they exchanged goodnights, an unsettling thought followed Sarah home. This was just the beginning, but could she truly trust herself to navigate the delicate balance between love and acceptance? Would the bonds they began to weave withstand the trials ahead? Or would darker truths emerge that could tear them apart? She stared out at the moonlit waves crashing against the shore, feeling the heavy weight of unresolved questions hanging in the air. The moment of truth was closing in, and she sensed it would challenge her more than she could imagine. Would she recognize the strength she needed when the time came to confront the unspoken conflicts lying in wait? The following morning, Sarah found herself caught between the exhilarating rush of potential and an unsettling undercurrent of anxiety. The sun streamed through her kitchen window, illuminating the cabinets that held the tools of her culinary passion. As she stirred a pot of simmering tomato sauce, memories of joyful family gatherings filled her mind. She cherished the moments of laughter and competition in the kitchen. But today, uncertainty clouded her thoughts. Was she truly ready to embrace the changes looming on the horizon? The aroma of basil and garlic pulsed through the air, tethering her to a sense of home, even as she grappled with the emerging dynamics of her relationship with Jake and his fiancée. Sarah recalled last night's burst of determination, the desire to build a new family framework. But could she transform that impulse into tangible actions? Deliberately, she reached for her phone and opened the contact for Jake. She hesitated, her thumb hovering over the screen. It felt monumental, this outreach. Too often had she considered herself a passive participant in her son's life. It was time to reclaim that narrative, not to dominate it but to share it. She typed a simple message. "Can we talk about our plans for the wedding? I want to be part of the process." The risk of rejection loomed, but alongside it was a growing fervor to assert her presence as a significant player in their lives. As she set the phone down, the sound of laughter drifted from the neighboring yard. It was the joyous sound of children playing, likely signaling another afternoon of family time beyond her control. For the past few weeks, she had watched as Jake and his fiancée began building their own life together. The instinct to protect their bond battled with the urge to embrace this new phase of family life. Immersing herself back into the rhythm of cooking, Sarah reflected on her own skills. The gentle simmer of the sauce paralleled her growing resolve. Cooking had always been an anchor in her life. It was more than sustenance. It was an expression of love. If she wanted to build bridges, maybe this was her pathway. The idea blossomed. She could suggest hosting a cooking session with Jake and his fiancée. A space where they could bond over ingredients, flavors, and laughter. It could be an experiential stepping stone, a way to share her legacy in the kitchen while respecting their budding relationship. As thoughts spiraled, determination hardened. With renewed focus, she jotted down a few recipe ideas, envisioning the promised chaos and laughter of learning to cook together. But doubt whispered still. Would Jake and his fiancée view her initiative as interference, or an earnest attempt to bond? Would they appreciate her effort, or dismiss it as antiquated maternal behavior. The phone buzzed. Jake's light-hearted emoji-laden response broke through her reverie. Absolutely. Let us plan something later this week. Relief washed over her, turning her nervous energy into a profound sense of purpose. In the moments that followed, Sarah transformed her worries into strategies. She envisioned the layout of the dishes, what tasted good together, what preferred methods she could share. She yearned for more than acceptance, she wanted connection. She was ready to open her heart in a new way, yet was entirely aware that with this openness came the inevitable risk of heartbreak if things didn't unfold as she hoped. As she chopped fresh herbs, the weight of her decisions pressed on her shoulders. Each ingredient was a symbol of her resolve, a pledge to step into the unknown with intention and courage. She could not lean completely into the past that she once occupied. To do so would be to distort the very fabric of what she strove to create. A family tapestry that interwove both new and old threads. Time slipped away as she initiated her culinary preparations for their upcoming gathering. Yet, as she stirred the pot, a thought snagged on the edge of her consciousness. Would she be ready to address the other underlying issues bubbling just below the surface? The meal may bring laughter and connection, but would they confront the unacknowledged challenges at the heart of this blending family? A knot formed in her stomach. The truth could break or bind them more tightly than ever. As the sauce thickened, so too did her resolve, and she contemplated how she might face not only the openness of the moment, but the fragile truths that lay beneath. This was merely a step, yet a significant shift was undoubtedly on the horizon. She could feel the pull of change as acutely as the scent of simmering tomatoes, drawing her nearer to a reality that demanded authenticity and transparency. As the sun dipped, casting long shadows across her kitchen counter, Sarah seized her phone once more, fired by a sudden impulse. It was time to express her intention more clearly, to pull back the curtain on her fears, making way for the new bonds she truly hoped to forge. She typed out a message to both Jake and his fiancée, setting the stage not just for a family gathering, but also for an open discussion about their evolving roles. With a deep breath, she hit send, setting in motion a path that would inevitably lead to deeper revelations. Little did she know, this pivotal moment would spark a conversation that could either solidify their bond or expose fractures that had yet to be reckoned with. Would she be able to navigate through the tensions rising beneath the surface? Or would the weight of their shared love shift dramatically in unforeseen ways? A few days later, Sarah stood in her kitchen, the familiar sounds of knife meeting cutting board echoing around her. The confident rhythm of her movements felt like a lifeline, anchoring her amidst a whirl of uncertainty. She had spent these past few days planning for the upcoming cooking session with Jake and his fiancée. But beneath her operational focus, a storm of self-doubt brewed. What had she truly hoped to achieve? What lay behind her insistence on this cooking session? As the simmering sauce and the finely chopped vegetables formed potential partnerships, her mind drifted to the deeper layers of family dynamics that simmered just like her meals. Her phone buzzed again, and Sarah's heart raced at the sight of Jake's eager message. "Can't wait for our session. Emma has some great ideas for appetizers." It was an innocent message, but a rush of familiar anxiety coursed through her veins. She thought of Emma, charming yet unfamiliar in this new configuration of her family. Will she enact the role of an overbearing mother-in-law, or embrace the collaborative spirit of a new family? There was potential in this venture not just for bonding, but also for healing. Sarah realized she carried a weight of expectations, her own, and those of her son. Could she really navigate this complex emotional landscape? The thought of grappling with the unsaid tensions made her stomach knot once more. Moreover, her decision to address their family roles openly added pressure. A bold move, she reminded herself. After years of feeling essential alongside Jake, her new position felt precarious. What if Emma's acceptance of her maternal input turned into resentment? A plunge into vulnerability was one thing, ensuring it didn't backfire was another. As she finished prepping, her thoughts drifted to the recipes she had selected. Each dish was carefully chosen, but beyond their flavors, they represented pieces of the family traditions infused with her love. What if her thoughtfully curated menu wasn't enough? What if no dish could replace the profound change that had come with their new family structure? She stashed the ingredients away, the groceries symbolizing her hopes tucked neatly in the fridge. Each item was meant to prompt laughter and connection, yet was shrouded in the fear that the cracks in her family might loom even larger during this gathering. Was the potential for connection strong enough to bind the fragile threads they were tangled in? The night before their session, Sarah couldn't shake the anticipation that gripped her tightly. She envisioned the kitchen bustling with renewed energy, laughter echoing off the walls. But the thrill was mixed with a gnawing fear. Would her attempts feel outdated? Or would they resonate with the younger couple bursting with new ideas and dreams? She found herself pacing, circling the kitchen as if brainstorming paths to connection. The more she considered it, the more she saw this gathering as a double-edged sword. Was she inviting growth or simply revisiting old wounds? How did one concoct a recipe for acceptance over the complexities of familial relations? And then there was the unanswered message, the one she had left open about discussing their evolving roles. Would this cooking session be the perfect launchpad for that conversation? Or an awkward prelude to heartache? That thought lingered stubbornly, nagging at her as she laid out her preparations. Each item she arranged on the counter reminded her of the stakes involved, not merely the food, but the connection forged through shared effort. Dawn broke, ushering in the day of their gathering, brightening her kitchen space, but heavy clouds still clasped at her heart. Her resolve flickered. Today was not just another family day. It was a pivotal opportunity to shift relational paradigms from the inside out. In a fateful moment, she made a decision, reaching once more for her phone. Perhaps it was time to initiate the conversation she had feared. Playfully, she summoned her strength, typing a brief message. Let's lay out some ground rules. Today, new bridges to cross and lots of flavor to explore. She hesitated, thumb hovering over the send button. With a final, deep breath, she pressed send, feeling as though she had just hurled a commitment into the unknown. Would this simple text ignite a transformative dialogue, or unleash the simmering tensions hiding beneath their collective surface? One thing was certain. The boundaries of their relationships were about to be tested more than they ever had before, and Sarah couldn't help but wonder what would emerge once the truth was set free. The kitchen was alive with the scent of rosemary and garlic as Sarah adjusted the warm oven's temperature, her heart racing with anticipation. It was nearly time for Jake and Emma to arrive. She busied herself, focusing on the tasks within her control. Yet every chop of the knife felt like a countdown to an impending conversation that weighed heavier than any meatloaf she had ever made. The simmering pot on the stove was noisy, a cacophony of bubbling chaos that mirrored her own inner turmoil. Each spontaneous pop seemed to punctuate her thoughts, escalating the unease swirling in her stomach. She inhaled deeply, attempting to steady her nerves, reminding herself that this was not merely about food. Today, she hoped to blend tradition with new ideas, family with the unfamiliar. When Jake and Emma finally walked through the door, bright-eyed and full of excitement, Sarah felt an unexpected sting of jealousy surge within her. There was a lightness to their union, an ease she longed to recreate in her own dynamic. Yet, the moment embraced by their joyful exchanges shattered as Sarah summoned the courage to break the invisible barrier that loomed overhead. "Welcome. I'm glad you're both here. Let us get started, shall we?" she said, forcing a smile that belied her inner chaos. They gathered around the countertop, laughter shared over the chopping board, the camaraderie building around the chopping and slicing of ingredients. Jake and Emma began discussing their ideas for appetizers, voices blending with the sounds of sizzling. The air turned vibrant, promising opportunities for connection. Yet Sarah felt disconnected, standing on the periphery of their bubbling enthusiasm. "Mom, how do you think we should start?" Jake's question pierced through her reverie, drawing Sarah back into the moment. This wasn't about her, she reminded herself. It was a collaborative effort, a melding of past and present. But the word start sparked a wave of anxiety as she weighed her response carefully. "I think we should," and there, her voice faltered. The ground rules she'd crafted in her mind flickered like the flames on the stove. Her instincts screamed for her to push for the conversation, but an overwhelming force held her back, a fear of jeopardizing this fragile moment. Instead, she watched as Emma excitedly tossed around ideas, her energy infectious. "How about mini bruschettas? They're always a hit," she exclaimed, and Jake nodded, clearly enamored by Emma's enthusiasm. Each suggestion acted as a thread, weaving them closer together, while Sarah felt the fabric of their bond pulling away from her grasp. As they moved forward with the cooking, Sarah observed their interactions, noting the subtle shifts in tone, the exchanges that carried weight beyond mere words. Her apprehension grew as she pondered whether she was relegating herself to the sidelines. She had spent her life nurturing Jake, building a foundation of love, but now she feared becoming irrelevant, a spectator in her own family's evolution. "Guys, before we get too far into the appetizers," Sarah blurted, the urgency of the moment overwhelming her certainty. She cleared her throat, steeling herself. "I think we should talk about how our roles are changing." The words hung in the air, heavy with implications. Jake and Emma exchanged glances, a flicker of hesitance spilling over their excitement. Sarah could see their expressions etch from playful to uncertain. The once lively atmosphere became taut, each of them processing the weight of her statement. "Like, what do you mean, Mom?" Jake ventured, cautiously probing. "About family traditions, expectations, and how we can move forward together," she articulated, though her heart raced as she realized she had opened the proverbial Pandora's box. For a moment, silence enveloped them, like a thick fog swallowing all anticipation. Sarah took a step back, challenging herself to reflect. This could be a turning point, an opportunity for growth that she had long sought, but feared might shatter the fragile web of connection they had woven today. But what if this dialogue exposed deeper rifts instead of fostering the unity she craved? The stakes felt primal. As she initiated the conversation, she realized the ground beneath her might not be as stable as she hoped. The tension was palpable, yet beneath it lay the potential for deeper understanding and communication. Would they venture into the uncomfortable truths she knew lurked beneath their harmonious facade, or retreat to the safe shore of well-rehearsed silence? With the future of their family dynamics hanging in the balance, Sarah braced herself for the truth that could either bind their new relationships or unravel them completely. Would she find the courage to navigate the storm ahead? Or would fear pull her back into an isolation she desperately sought to escape? The following weeks unfolded with a profound sense of revitalization for Sarah. The cooking session had transformed her relationship with Jake and Emma from one of unwieldy tension to a delicate balance of newfound understanding. They had navigated through complexities she had once feared but ultimately embraced, reshaping the fabric of their family. Jake had been attentive, expressing gratitude for Sarah's efforts to bridge the gap, while Emma had surprisingly opened up, sharing her own insecurities about juggling her commitment to Jake and the responsibility that came with it. This connection over shared meals became a springboard for deeper conversations about boundaries and mutual respect, the very issues that had initially cast shadows on their evolving dynamic. With each passing day, Sarah felt herself developing solid confidence in her new role. The kitchen had transformed into a sanctuary of culinary exploration. It became a metaphorical space for authenticity and transparency. Engaging with Jake and Emma felt like sculpting a masterpiece together, where each offered their unique strengths and challenges, creating a vibrant family tapestry. Recognizing their partnership had profound effects on Sarah's self-identity, invigorating her with an unmistakable sense of fulfillment. She found herself caring less about fitting into an old mold of motherhood, and more about carving her own path where collaboration and support took precedence. Wouldn't they all thrive more when they recognized the value each brought? Then came the moment she had long anticipated. The invitation to deliver a toast at Jake and Emma's wedding. They had kept her presence integral rather than merely sidelining her. It was a testament to their belief that they could celebrate love while honoring past sacrifices. Sarah found herself standing in front of friends and family, microphone in hand, the weight of her heart racing in her chest. As she surveyed the sea of faces, Sarah felt a swell of recognition wash over her, a realization of her journey from the cocoon of solitude to the embrace of shared love and experience. They had forged a reassuring framework rooted in authenticity. Today, she began, the words spilling forth with ease, isn't just a celebration of Jake and Emma's union, but also a reminder of the beautiful evolution of family. She drew a subtle glance at Jake, whose eyes shone with trust, and then looked at Emma, who nodded encouragingly from the front row. As families we grow, We cultivate connections that transcend traditional roles and challenge expectations. The culmination of her own heartfelt journey spilled into the words she spoke, resonating as she held on to hope and joy. Let this marriage symbolize open hearts. To Jake, I am proud of the man you have become. And to Emma, thank you for recognizing and accepting our unique bond. A ripple of approval cascaded through the gathered crowd, embedding Sarah's words in the ambience of the ceremony. She had established her place in this moment. With each passing sentence, she absorbed the validation growing in her heart. As she concluded the toast, the applause that followed reinforced her confidence. Someone had finally echoed the affirmation she had sought throughout her journey, and it meant the world. She realized that perhaps her participation in the wedding was more than just mere attendance. It was tangible proof of the family she had helped build, of the love that underscored everything they stood for. Quickly, it became clear, Sarah had accomplished far more than she could have envisioned. She had transformed from a mother who feared exclusion to a celebrated matriarch, forging connections and embracing family dynamics with unyielding warmth. Her professional accomplishments as a nurse seemed like a parallel journey, where she had spent years cultivating her compassion for others, but now she had also nurtured herself, acknowledging her worth beyond motherhood. At that moment, Sarah felt wholly fulfilled. A pillar of guidance and acknowledgement for both Jake and Emma, she could finally express the pride she held not just as a mother, but as an individual who had conquered her insecurities, tightened the knots of familial love, and affirmed her rightful place at the heart of their lives. With buoyant spirits, they all danced into the night, unity palpable amongst them. This was the ultimate celebration, the joy of family reborn in the light of mutual respect and acceptance, where everyone had come together to define their collective truth on their own terms. Now, in the space of that wedding platform, Sarah smiled knowingly, for she realized that winding through the difficulties of family dynamics had allowed her to reclaim not just her connection, but every element of her identity. They had grown together, and as they stepped into the future, she felt emboldened by the unwavering support of her family, the one she had fought so hard to redefine. This was it. She had arrived fully into her existence, taking charge and acknowledging who she was, a proud mother and a powerful individual. The possibilities seemed boundless. Don't wait even one more second to share your thoughts about Sarah's incredible journey. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories, because you need to stay tuned for what comes next. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and amplify the emotional messages we create together. Comment your reactions and theories about this transformative conclusion, exploring the depths of fulfillment Sarah discovered. And share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Your support makes a huge difference.